Higuchi by far has one of the best head outside drags in the world. So we're going to take a look at it. There's some common things that come up, and the very first one is no matter what, he's got to get the opponent's arm that he wants to drag, he's got to get that hand down. So no matter how he does it, he's got to get that opponent's hand down. So we see right here, he gets his opponent's hand down. And then another common thing is his actual drag hand. So Higuchi's left hand is at least above the guy's elbow. Sometimes he's high in the armpit, sometimes he's right above the guy's elbow, sometimes he's in the middle where the tricep is. It seems that no matter where on the guy's arm, as long as it's above the elbow, he's fine with it. All right, and then the whole goal is basically just to get the angle outside of the guy's arm and then get around it. All right, so those three things is what he's trying to do: get the guy's hand down, hand above his elbow, and then get around that angle. Before we start looking at his footwork and kind of this balance thing he's doing in here, let's look at one more thing he does with his hands. And I really haven't seen many other guys do this. So one of the things he's trying to do is get the guy's hand down. So often, as he goes to drag, guys will try to get their hand back up and run out of his drag. So we see here his opponent's hand will start to move up and try and get in between their bodies so that Higuchi can't get around his arm, which is essentially what you're trying to do in a drag, is get around one of their lines of defense, being their arm. And as this guy's hand starts to come up, Higuchi uses his free hand to block it, and here he grabs it and pushes it back down toward the mat. This requires some patience, but it allows him to keep the opponent's hand across his body, giving him more time to get the angle on the outside, as we can see right here. All right, I've just been calling this either a drag reset or a hand reset. So he drags, knocks hand back down. Here he actually controls it, pulls it across, and is able to get that outside angle that he wants. So here's another variation of that hand reset. So there we see he goes drag and then knocks Seth Gross's hand back down to try and keep that angle outside his arm. So he starts to go drag, and now we see Higuchi's hand come up, and he's just gonna knock Seth Gross's wrist back down as he uses his drag hand to pull it across to get that outside angle to his leg. All right, let's take a look at Higuchi's footwork. His stance, he's on basically 100% left leg lead, but when he goes to drag, he's always switching his feet. All right, this is to help get that outside angle on his drag. So here we can see he's left leg lead. As he goes to drag, his back foot steps up, and he always aims to get it outside his opponent's foot, where his opponent's foot is between his feet. All right, so he takes that outside step. Now his other foot, steps away and back. This does a couple things. All right, it lets him circle toward his right easier. His right foot's in front, it's easier to circle to the right with a good angle. All right. It also protects his left leg. So if he were to leave his left leg in front as he drags, his opponent's drag hand could come in and catch that leg fairly easily. All right, so outside step, splits his opponent's foot, takes his left leg out of the way to protect it, and to start getting the outside angle to his drag. Now, once his outside foot hits again, so we see him go back step, and then his outside foot is going to step back up a little bit to start to chase that angle. Then his inside foot comes up and across. All right, he does a great job of pointing his toe the direction his opponent's going to be. All right, so we see right here his left foot toe is pretty much pointed forward, but as we continue through, we see that it starts to angle toward where his opponent's going to be. All right, and then he's able to drive to his knee and then attack his opponent's leg. Now, sometimes this footwork is in individual steps, and sometimes it's same time. So here we see him still take that outside step to switch his feet. All right. Now, as his other one comes back, he's gonna hop and almost do a split step to start getting momentum going back forward. All right. I wouldn't call having this straight leg an ideal wrestling position, especially when your foot is in front of your knee and your leg is completely straight. It's not great defensively or offensively, really. But as he takes this backwards momentum, he's going to transfer it all back into this foot once it hits the mat. So here we see both feet in the air. Back foot is going to come down first, moving all his momentum back forward and into the attack. And then again, gets that inside foot back up. So back foot hits. He's got good angle around the guy's arm. As he chases, his back leg's gonna come up and in to attack his head outside shot. Okay, let's go back to this clip to take a look at this counterbalance action that helps him with his drag, keeps the opponent close. All right, so again, typically feet in front of knees is not ideal, but he's using this kind of lean backwards with his drag to counterbalance his opponent from going away. All right, we're gonna see his opponent's hips go backwards here. So his opponent's hips go backwards and Higuchi's hips kind of go backwards to counterbalance and then pull him back toward himself. All right, so there's drag, both their hips start to go away, and then we see the direction change of the opponent as Higuchi pulls him with his drag back to his attack. Let's take a look at this clip, go through all the kind of pieces that show up in all of his drags before we hit some less detailed stuff about where he's doing it from and some finish options. So here we see again, gets his opponent's hand down, hand above elbow, and then outside step, trying to get outside his opponent's foot to help himself get around that arm. Outside step. Now we can see if he leaves this leg in front, his opponent will likely be able to grab it. So he starts to switch his feet. His opponent's hand starts to reach up and across. Higuchi uses his free hand to knock it back down. And there you can actually see where his opponent tries to grab his leg. Go out, and his back foot hits. He tries to transfer weight or momentum going back forward. And then step his right leg back in on his high crotch. Alright. And there's also that kind of counterbalance component. So here is Higuchi starts to go backwards a little bit. We can see his opponent's hips are going to try and go backwards a little bit. There they go backwards. And then Higuchi uses his drag to pull him back into the space he's going to create. Alright, let's take a look at some of the places that he's getting his drag from. And again, the main rule for trying to drag is, can you get the opponent's hand down? Alright, and so here we see from his inside tie, hand comes over, inside tie, and right here we can see his opponent putting pressure down his arm. He's over top, putting pressure down his arm. All Higuchi has to do, once he feels this pressure, is release his inside tie hand. Opponent's hand follows straight down. And it's real easy drag into his attack. Here we're going to see him drag where his opponent tries to grab his hand or wrist, either one. Alright. Now as he does this, to kind of clear the opponent's hand or wrist off, he's going to take his own hand kind of across his body toward his opposite hip. Right, this also helps accomplish the goal of getting around the opponent's arm. So we see Higuchi's hand ends up over on the opposite side of his body as he transitions into his drag. Now we're going to see him use just a simple wrist snap to get his opponent's hand off right into his drag. Alright. So he uses his hand and actually his head to knock this hand off. Again, all this stuff, similar footwork. Skips out to the side for that angle, right into his drag. One other place worth mentioning that he drags from is off an opponent's attack. So here we still see that it meets the criteria of opponent's hand down, which if he's attacking, probably should be. Now, on his down block, he's already looking to get outside angle toward his drag. So we're going to see him hop both feet out to the side and then transition his drag hand right into the opponent's armpit. Outside steps to try and get around his arm with good hip angle. Drops right in to his leg attack. Alright, let's just take a look at some finish options real quick. Higuchi's exclusively head outside when he attacks to the right. So all his finishes are going to be in line with that idea, and it's just the way he drags, it puts him head outside. I mean, there is head inside drags, but Higuchi is exclusively head outside. So the first one we're going to look at is just a simple drag. Gets the opponent down to the mat and is able to keep weight shifted across. What an arrow. Is able to keep weight shifted across his body. We'll see a bunch of weight on his opponent's knee and on his hand throughout this sequence. And he just anchors on his hamstring. And again, weight stays shifted across. And is able to just finish with a simple run down, go behind type of finish. Another finish option is to just transition into a double leg. All right, so we see as he's starting to run his drag, he either loses pressure to the far side or opponent just does a good job of getting weight off this opposite side. And as they wrestle back up, he just uses his outside anchor to pull himself in to double leg, sits the opponent right down. Fairly simple, fairly easy finish. Similar to his double leg finish, he can also go high crotch, I guess when he feels like the leg's too far away. So I actually really like this clip. We're going to see a lot of different directions of weight shift here. So Higuchi drags, really gets the opponent to step hard forward. Now, again, we can see weight's going to be through the outside on his opponent's knee. Opponent does a pretty good job of rotating to try to recover the angle. Still, weight shifted across. Now as Higuchi transitions down, his opponent is going to try and go feet away and then hips back in. All right. So he goes from leaning away to trying to lean back in, but his angle is not great to defend here, and it's also why a lot of Higuchi's finishes end up in crackdown, which we'll see right here. The last thing we're going to take a quick look at is how he's using his drag as a setup for something else. All right, so here we're going to see right there. All right, just quick. He's going to bring this hand across like he's going to drag, touch his opponent's elbow, and then looks to attack opposite side. All right, this gets the opponent to react to his drag, making the other side fairly easy or easier to attack. He's going to do the same thing. We're going to see him reach across, touch opponent's elbow real quick, and then look to attack. There it is. Touch. Opponent's like, oh no, he's going to drag me. And then attacks opposite side instead. So there's kind of two ways he's using it. The first two we looked at were to attack the opposite side by making the opponent defend the wrong direction. These next two that we're going to look at are to make the opponent's arm fly up. So again, one of the things he's trying to do in his drag is get the opponent's hand down. So he'll use this fake drag to help get the opponent's arm up. So we're going to see his hand come across, land right on his opponent's arm. All right, and at the same time, his opponent's going to try and take his elbow away, and Higuchi's going to use that momentum to lift his hand up to open a window for his high crotch. And as far as I can tell, he decides which side he's going to attack based on which leg the opponent leads. So one more, same way. We see it's a little harder to see, but you're gonna see this, his drag hand come across, touch elbow, and then we see the opponent's hand and arm come out to the side and attack high crotch.